Hey, hi guys, it's Tony, the training manager, and we're just going to look at Niagara Tenant Billing. Quick disclaimer before we start, you'll need to make sure that your meters, the way that you store the data, and the tenant billing itself is appropriate for your particular use case in your particular country. I know that in some countries, MBUS is a requirement. Yeah, just keep that sort of thing in mind when you're using this. So what is tenant billing? It's an invoicing add-on to Niagara. It allows you to configure owners, it allows you to configure tenants, your invoices with logos and that sort of thing, and then specify which meters belong to which tenants, how often they should be invoiced, what their multipliers are, and what the tax rates are, and that sort of thing, and do that automatically. The idea is that you can set up a whole load of meters. Prerequisite is that you need to have your meters configured to collect histories. The histories are how the whole system calculates what the previous use is. It's not something that has to be running, sort of runs and calculates in the background. What it does is you tell it to generate an invoice. It generates the invoice looking at what happened historically. So if you want to invoice for the past 5 days, it'll just look at the past 5 days worth of the history. So histories are a prerequisite. Knowing who your owners, who your tenants are, and having the details for them, for their addresses, for their emails and so on are a prerequisite. And I would suggest that setting up the email service, if you haven't done in Niagara, also makes it a lot more useful, because then you can automatically send out the invoices via email, and you're not limited to manually printing out PDFs. There's a few gotchas to get started with Niagara Tenant Billing. The one that gets me straight off is the fact that it's not TEN. When you're looking for the palette, it's Niagara Tenant Billing. So it's almost ready to go as it is. You can put it anywhere. I would be tempted to put it into the services. Reason being, it's actually a tenant billing service, but it looks like it will work under anywhere in config. I'd err on the side of caution and put it in services. And we've got owners, utilities, invoices, auto billing profile, templates. Now, the second gotcha is going to be that you're going to need some templates for the invoicing. Now, you can create your own. The B format's relatively simple. It's all explained in the documentation. However, inside the module, if we go up to my file system, not down my modules, that doesn't work. Don't ask me why. But under the sys-home, under modules, Niagara Tenant Billing, in the RT jar, which should be the runtimes, there is a res folder. So this is actually inside of the module itself. And inside the res, short for resources, there are a whole load of templates that should get you started on the system. So best thing to do, copy those, just right-click copy, go all the way back down to your station, and paste it into your files, maybe under a folder named Tenant Billing, so you know what it's about. There we go. Now you can open these same as any other PX. If you go into the edit mode, they won't be able to load up any values, because the values will be brought in as they're being loaded as a template to generate invoices. But you can double click on here and you can see some of the example B formats. So feel free to play with these. Find one that works for you, but they're a starting point and they have the values in there that you might need. Okay. Setting up most of this, it's a simple case of double clicking on the thing you want to add. So let's add in an owner. And we can set up a company logo, but we'll skip that for now. So we have one set of people who are going to be issuing the invoices. We then need, if we double click on them, it then brings us, so we double click on the items and it brings us to the next step. Next step is to set up a tenant. Okay, double click on the tenant and it'll bring us to this contract manager view. So we set up a contract. Let's go standard electricity. Currency for us is going to be pounds. Include tax, yes. I honestly don't know if electricity is standard rate VAT, but let's assume it is. And then we get down to this template and meter settings. Now, this is a good point for us to jump to the meter setup. Go to the utilities, click on new utility. Let's just add a standard one. Double click on that. So this brings us to the meter manager. We add in a new meter, so you can add a selection of meters if necessary. This works on the history identifier, Epsom supervisor, and then tenant drive 101 total watt hours. I'm going to put that in, utility rate just 1 times. Editors note that's £1 per watt hour, so that's going to end up with a very, very expensive invoice. So watch out for that later on. So we've got a tenant set up. He's responsible for a particular meter. And then we can go and have a look at our templates. So in the templates, we'll skip over invoicing and auto billing for now. We can click new. We can add a new template. We can call this standard invoice electricity PX file. Now, if we've copied out the files from the module, they'll be down here under our tenant billing folder or wherever we've put them. We can just go for a flat rate template. We don't need any breakdowns or anything. Click OK. Double click on it to see what it would look like. You will get errors because it's unable to process the details from the record until you've generated the invoice, but it gives you an idea of where these different values are going to end up. Now, so far we've got somebody who's doing the invoicing, someone who's being invoiced. We've got a meter set up. But we haven't told it which of the tenants, which of the invoicees is responsible for that meter. So let's just go back into the owners, have a look at my landlord company, office company, standard electricity. So this is going to need a template, standard invoice electricity template. It's the one we got available, and he's going to need a meter. So he's responsible for that electricity meter we set up earlier. And then if we go back, so back to the client, we've got standard electricity, and we've got a generate invoices button. So this will take us through the process of what he's being invoiced for. So he's being invoiced for the standard electricity, the only contract we have for now. Let's go for the last day's worth of usage, but you can configure what days you're going to invoice for. Click next. Save invoices to PDF. I quite like having it on. That's going to be really the only way we can see it at the moment. Can't send an email, so I'm going to skip the emails, but obviously you can set that up in the if you've got an email service configured correctly. Let's finish this. And then down here we've got invoice 6 in my file space. Niagara can't display it, so I'm going to have to jump to Windows Explorer. Let's go and have a look for Niagara. Even user home stations, Epsom Super, shared, invoice 6, and there we go. So we've got a used amount cost per unit. Ignore the fact that this is extortionately expensive or a ridiculous amount of invoice. This just happens to be how mine was configured. So the other thing we have to look at is the billing profiles. There's a default in here which you might well stick to. We can edit this, so we can say this is monthly on the first of every month, and invoice at midnight. Any adjustments we can put in here. Save invoices to PDF, so we got a record of them on the station, and away we go. So naturally that's used by the owners and by the individual clients. You can set up, click on the landlord, click edit. So landlord company, I've configured to use the default automatic billing profile. The tenant will automatically be using that. Go to the parent, click on office company. So they will automatically use what the parent is using, so what the owner is using, but you can specify different billing profiles. You want to start when the customer moves in, something like that. It's flexible. It's set up for these sorts of things. We've also got a list of old invoices. So I've done a few tests here, and you can view these directly. You'll have to ignore the fact that it generates the invoice for Workbench as it goes, so it shows you on the screen that happening. Loads of pop-ups, but you can see. You can go through, you can see what the previous inquiries were. I obviously had one here that was broken, so I've got a B form that I didn't quite like. So you've got you're keeping records of everything that's gone on. You've also, if you've configured it to email, you've got the email records. But obviously, once you've got everything set up, you've got the starting points of the templates. These templates are fairly boring looking, but you can move the points around. They work through the standard PX editor, so you can set those up however you want. You can add in more owners, you can add in more tenants. You can have different billing rates for different users. Really flexible, really useful for this sort of thing. I hope that's been useful, and I'll speak to you guys soon.